Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Asaf Blubshtein, and I'm a product solution architect for VMware working on VMware Cloud. Today, I will be moderating the chat and attempting to answer questions, but I will pass it on to Nitasha, who will present about VMware Tanzu.
Thank you, Asaf. I'm Natasha, from the Tanzu team, and I'm a staff solution engineer on VMware Tanzu team. I have an extensive background in development, so women who code totally fits. I am your person, so I'm not like a product person. I have been there, done that, been coding hands-on all these years, and evolved from doing back and front end, up and down the stack, and then eventually decided to come partner and work at VMware, where we are building some of these killer products for in Tanzu, solving a lot of our developer pains. So with that, I just wanted to give you a quick 101, and hopefully you find it interesting and get the message. But for just housekeeping, uh, I'd like to take your questions, want to answer them at the end of it so that I can go through and make sure that we've gone through all the content that I have today. And if we run out of time on these questions, we'll definitely reach back out to you. All right, so let me share my screen. So what is Tanzu? And that's going to be our uh, whole 1 hour conversation. And I'm going to try my best to get that across. So at Tanzu, we have two primary themes: how to free our apps, free our devs, and how to simplify ops. So and here's a quick look at what the agenda looks like. So we talk about what is Tanzu. We talk about the containership shift that happened, why it happened, how it helps, and how did Kubernetes come into play, the challenges that Kubernetes brought along with it. And moving on, how VMware Tanzu Kubernetes operator is what fits and solves for a lot of those challenges. Then I'll tell you a quick developer story. It may or may not be mine, and it may or may not be yours, but we'll talk about a developer story. And then from there, talk about Tanzu application platform. And then since it's Women Who Code, I didn't want to leave without showing you a quick demo. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get started. So what is VMware Tanzu? So like I said, with VMware Tanzu, we are here to help you transform your applications and infrastructure in a way that's right for your org. Um, your and just match your priorities. Your priorities may be more aligned to modernizing your apps, or be aligned to how to get that multi-cloud nirvana and still be sane doing that. Or you might just need help in that initial, and you're just starting the journey and you need help with someone coming in initially and setting up the stage for a successful app modernization path for your organization. So that's sort of the crux of what Tanzu is all about. But why, how did we get here? So according to a survey, it's predicted that in the next 3 years, enterprises would be building about 500 million apps, which is uh, which is almost equal to all of the applications that have been created over the last 40 years. And we have to accomplish that in 3 years. So we really need to be faster at what we do and be more efficient. The time to market has to be super quick. And the operators have to be able to support all of this in a sane fashion. So, but why are we pushing 500 million apps? Because there's digitization all everywhere. There is a immense amount of revenue that's being driven from the digital channels. There's requirements to like be supporting anything and everything, and then because we are building so much, it needs to be uh, modernized. And what that means really is that it needs to be cloud ready. We should be able to take all the advantages of uh, the various different offerings of the cloud. It needs to be secure. There's you every day we hear about all these security breaches and such. So we need to, while we are doing all this, we need to make sure that it's also secure. But then how do we get from here to there? We start with the design idea and it has to reach my user and quick, like yesterday, right? So that's the pace we need to move forward with. And with, with that in mind, all of this has to be secure, consistent, fast, and scalable. We need to follow microservices architecture, design pattern, and make sure we have all these smaller pieces which make time to market quicker, and yet be able to communicate uh, and securely with each other and be able to address the business need. So then uh, came along containers, and containers are taking over the world, and rightfully so. They have they are super lightweight, very little overhead, um, extremely portable, and then consistency. So what and consistency, all of these are key to achieving that multi-cloud nirvana we spoke about. We we use this portable container and are in a position now to move it wherever we want. And let's look at what a container really is. So in the virtual machine world, that is how, like, this is how it looked like. The virtual machines, you'd you'd have the physical server, the hypervisor layer, and then the virtual machine. Each virtual machine would have its own app running on it, guest operating system. So every time there is a patch, that VM would need to be patched. If you are preparing to move this app into another environment, you need to make sure all the binaries, libraries, all the dependencies, configurations are copied over to this new virtual machine. So that's a lot of work. And I remember every time I had to push a change from dev to QA, I'd figure that everything works in dev because we took the time, or over the development cycle, we made sure that everything was available on the dev virtual machine, but not so much on the test. So we struggled. Um, I'm sure all of you who've been around for a little longer have seen that. So then came the idea of containers. So containers, like I said, portable, lightweight versions of your little virtual machines. So what happened is that your one virtual machine now became the host for various containers. So there is a container runtime, also container manager, which runs on that virtual machine. Your container is able to share the guest OS libraries across all the multiple containers. And then all the app binaries, dependencies, and everything app is packaged in that container. So that's what made it portable. So now if I have to move this app from VM1 to VM2, I just take that container, move it along, and keep pushing it to whatever environment has a container runtime. But let's look at um, what were the challenges. Now the challenges are when I move from, if I have an app which needs multiple container instances running, my uh, from a from a DR standpoint or a HA standpoint, I'd want to spread them across multiple VMs so that if one VM goes down, not everything's down. So, I have to think about all those things. And I have to make sure uh, um, that somebody's looking at these container instances always being running, being able to scale when something is coming in, be able to um, be able to patch if something's coming in. So how and that's where, and we have these millions of containers coming our way. So that's where it is a good idea, but it's not there all the way just yet. Just by the means of being a container, we are not there yet. So how do we go to cloud? Like, what is it that comes to mind? And that's where you would have heard Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is our orchestrator for various this is different container applications. It solves for the common container challenges, like provides a compute, provides storage, does networking for you. There is a way to inject your app configurations. There is a way to inject your secrets, passwords, database connections, all of that. So Kubernetes allows that to happen and made the container transition a little more sane. It also provides a standard API layer, which a lot of cloud providers and a lot of us included, VMware Tanzu included, we are leveraging it to be able to create custom objects, controllers, and by means of those custom objects, generate SSL certificates, for instance, be able to automatically add a load balancer. So a lot of additional functionality is now getting added to Kubernetes thanks to the standard API that's available. But then, so if Kubernetes is golden, and why still, based on this survey, we found that the Kubernetes in production is not really high, like 65% of organizations have maybe some footprint. And uh, almost all the respondents on our survey said that they definitely see there's a clear improved resource utilization. Um, there's the applications upgrade cycles are easier. So yes, so a lot of people are drawing those benefits from Kubernetes, and this is based on a 2021 report. Um, but then what are the challenges? So 96% of um, our customers or the survey participants had a difficulty selecting which distribution they want to use. 61% say that, well, while Kubernetes is easy to deploy, it's hard to manage and operate and upgrade and all of those things. And it's still in 2021, we are still at a point where we do not have enough experience and expertise in Kubernetes, and that's why organizations are struggling to adopt as much as they would like to adopt Kubernetes. And then leave alone the adoption. Once you get into Kubernetes, there's all these other cloud native features, functionalities that you are supposed to pick and choose from. CNCF is a great resource, and but the thing with a foundation is that there's so much to choose from. Which is the right one? Which is the one that fits your needs? It's a process. So either you choose to go that route, or you choose to use somebody else's opinion and somebody who's done it, proven it, and go with that. So those are all like kind of the challenges in managing Kubernetes. So how do we solve for this at VMware Tanzu? Our goal is to simplify ops. Let's talk about what is it that an ops, Kubernetes ops really means. So there's a desire to automate monitor clouds Kubernetes platform operations at the common place, sanely, optimize platform and operating cost, do it securely, be able to give a self-service access to the right people at the right level. And that's where the TKO or VMware Tanzu Kubernetes for Operator comes into play. But where do we start? The first step has to be on standardizing on a Kubernetes platform to manage, monitor, and secure your containers across cloud and clusters. Those are the common uh, Kubernetes operations that are necessary or have been deemed essential in any operator's mind. So there needs to be a consistent K8s runtime. I need to be able to, in a multi-cloud setup, and I say multi-cloud doesn't necessarily mean the hyperscalers, also means what you have on your data center, be it a DIY or some other solution. So how do we bring everything in the same management plane? We need to bring that together. And then how do we observe our platform? Then going from that, I need to ensure that there is a zero trust data encryption, end-to-end mutual TLS, be able to centrally manage all the certs, be able to manage the cert upgrade. How do you then provide an ingress controller or load balancer, which is enterprise grade? Yeah, there's a lot. CNCF, we just saw that there's a lot available in CNCF and open source. While it's open source and easy to access, easy to implement, but truly there's nothing open source. If you are doing anything at enterprise grade, you need some sort of support or you need some sort of an enterprise solution for it. And finally, how do you just enable your teams? We saw that Kubernetes people are hard to find. They're not, we are not there yet in terms of experience and expertise in Kubernetes. So that's, and for each of these areas, Tanzu Kubernetes operator has a solution in place where there is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, which is that consistent Kubernetes runtime. Tanzu Mission Control is your centralized management plane, which allows you to bring all of your uh, thousands of clusters together in a common place, bring it all together, manage it through a single management plane, and be able to apply policies, be able to upgrade them through that central place. Then there is Tanzu Observability solution, which is to observe your platform from infra to Kubernetes. So all the way up and down the stack, you can observe. Not just that, you can add observability for things beyond that. You can add observability for applications that are running on top of it, for databases that you're running on this environment. And then there is the service mesh solution based on top of Envoy and Istio, um, which is, again, you can do it yourself or you bring in somebody. I have experienced a lot of our customers are able to do that initial deploy, but how do you upgrade? That upgrade is where the day two operation is where everybody struggles. So that's where Tanzu Service Mesh comes into play and gives you the ability to centrally manage your um, service mesh. And, and then there's the RBNSX Advanced Load Balancer. Again, enterprise grade load balancer, ingress solution to serve all of the common needs that we see come to us over and over, uh, uh, which are benchmarked to performance, to perform at um, high response time applications and support all of that. Finally, with VMware Tanzu Labs, you get uh, that experienced team who's done this before, who's been doing this for the longest time, and have a certain level of experience in doing that for your org. So going from here, again, this is another view of the Tanzu portfolio. What is best about the the TKO portfolio is like it's all geared towards your operators. It's modular because there's a lot to cover in terms of just what the operator needs. So there's separate products, modular in that sense, and yet addresses everything that you'd need. And how our differentiator is that it's integrated in your SDDC tooling. We are already in your data centers. So we've integrated there. We start there and take it to cloud. There's everything's modular, full stack observability. So all of those good things, just all under that single umbrella, but addressing all of our common operator needs. And this is where we talk about like what is Tanzu Kubernetes Grid? How does it allow for me to provide that consistent Kubernetes runtime? Tanzu Mission Control. I can do, I have a policy engine which lets me apply all of these different policies to my clusters. Then I have a catalog from which I can deploy custom software uh, into my clusters and this is all centrally done. So I can lifecycle manage Kubernetes, or I can manage clusters from your existing um, GKE, EKS, AKS clusters that you might have. So all of that comes together in a single place. And then we move on to service mesh. So there's application agility, security, operations, the app continuity. How do you manage failovers? How do you manage high availability? So you can set it all up in the Tanzu service mesh. And finally, observability. I think we spoke about this, how we can do a full stack observability from infra to app, and again, everything in between. So that's one of the themes. The other theme, which is my favorite theme, is how do you free your apps and how do you free your devs? I've been a dev, and like I said, I'll tell you a quick developer story. I've been there, and this may or may not be my story. So let's look at this. So there, I started as a part of the developer team. I loved what I did, and I loved my team, and we were all working towards that common goal. And eventually, I became the rock star developer. Um, with that, I love to explore. I started in Java back back in the day when Java was brand new, moved up and down the stack, and went to do front end, back end, did Angular, did mobile development, then went to do architecture. I was living my best life. And then came along Kubernetes. And somebody told, like you may have heard, that it's the coolest thing to do. It is cool, but we'll just talk about the coolness a little bit from a developer standpoint. So I was told, or you all must have heard, for deploying to Kubernetes, we need to create containers. Then we need to deploy to Kubernetes. And all of my rockstar developers would know how it feels like to be thrown at a challenge and be giving it your all to deliver that. So that's what we do. That's what the developers do. They went in and landed that container on Kubernetes. So where do we go from here? Oh well, by the way, since that container is yours and you landed it there, can you also manage the CVEs on that container? And at that time, I'm a fish out of water. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just barely was able to get that container. Now I am owning that container and I know nothing about and not an ops person. I'm a dev and I somehow scraped through and did this and sitting here uh, dreaming what would we have wanted, right? And there's to dream on what we would have wanted. So clearly, Kubernetes is a platform for platforms, and it's a better place to start, not the end game, meaning Kubernetes is cool, it's ops cool, it's not dev cool. So we need to get back to our developer teams. And here's me trying to tell you all, Kubernetes is not dev cool. We need something that lets us live our best life, lets us swim like we do, and somehow that container gets dropped and I go back to swimming. I just and we all continue to do what we all enjoy, right? So that's the dream, and here's dreaming for that unicorn magical tap that would give me that stream of water, that bridge over Kubernetes, and I just enjoy doing what I am best at. I just explore the newer and the greatest, the backstages of the world, or maybe whatever next. Focus on application performance, focus on those things, not be distracted by Kubernetes, which is meant to be an operator um, tool. And then came along TAP, Tanzu application platform. And that's where we unlock developer productivity. We make it easier and provide a rapid yet sustainable path to production. And we coordinate the work between dev and ops, and everybody lives a happy life. So what does it take? So we saw how hard it is. Now just putting it down, laying it all out on what it takes. So a developer has to start somewhere, know what they're doing, have a good starting point for this application, then code, obviously iterate, debug, be able to run it, test it in their local environment, then prep a Docker file, then create the Docker image, push into a registry, then create the Kate spec, the whole big wall of YAMLs. So yeah, create that, and then make sure that all of your enterprise guardrails and best practices are accounted for in that Kubernetes spec. Of course, we're still like trying to manually do it. So that's there. And then configure the service, provide the config maps, a secret, all of that. And yes, how did we forget? Add that ingress. What is that ingress? It's a load balancer. Did I ever deal with a load balancer up until Kubernetes came? No, I did not. Like I just used to deploy and somebody else used to figure it out. But now that's what needs to be done. And then kubectl will apply and application runs. And it runs awesome, right? I don't have to worry. That's where Kubernetes starts to shine. I don't need to worry as a app ops or a developer that something would go down and nobody will even know, and we'll need somebody to manually come back in, spin it up. That's the magic of Kubernetes. It'll do all of those things for you. So now in our head, or in my head, the developer role or job ends at code. Everything else from there is a DevOps or a SecOps role. So, and and you might think that I'm talking in terms of purist role. And we have DevSecOps teams. That's what we are all about these days. But there are people who shine in a certain space, so we'd let them shine there and do their best job there. And then work on these other things in partnership with the SecOps and the AppOps teams. So going from here, so let's kind of review what all do you need. So we need a platform where it's easy to learn, easy to pick it up, and there's some sort of a place for your developer teams to upskill on whatever they're going to work on. So we need a learning platform. Then we need a place to start at this, where you get a greenfield developers get a good starting point. They don't have to look through outdated documentation on what are my enterprise best practices. Am I using Log4j or am I using Logback? Am I using what kind of metric monitoring needs to be in place? What all are my Maven dependencies? Like I need to figure that all out and have a great starting point. Then I iterate and debug. So that's dev. And the second ops, um, they they make sure that the tests and the build cycles run, the images are created, pushed, scanned, signed, and stored securely. And finally, moving on to them being deployed and runs and managing that Kubernetes up to date, upgrading, so all of that. So in Tanzu application platform, there is there is something in each of those spaces. There is a learning center where you can create learning artifacts for your team, and the team can go in and in a self-contained environment be able to practice it. There's app accelerators and API portal, which essentially provides you that uh, start.spring.io kind of place where you have all the dependencies taken care. Your developer goes in, downloads a starting point shell of a project, and then just starts to develop within it. And then there's IDE plugins that help to iterate in a Kubernetes-based environment, be able to provide that runtime from the developer editor to run it in a Kubernetes environment. And finally, be able to debug it and moving on. So again, the IDE plugin is what would allow you to do that. Then moving on to the second ops. And ops, there's a series of steps in a certain order that need to happen before a deploy or a run happens. So between second ops, they choreograph this pipeline of what happens when the dev pushes the code. Okay, when the dev pushes the code into a Git repo, I need to trigger a build, and this is bare minimum. I need to trigger a build. Uh, um, I need to test. Then I need to create container. Then I need to scan it, be able to sign it, and push it somewhere. Uh, from there, create the app delivery and Kubernetes artifacts for this deployment, and then run on a runtime. So all of that uh, is designed in the choreography of Tanzu application platform, which is also, you hear me refer to it as supply chain. So we create that supply chain of start here and these steps, and then push finally out there. And this supply chain is where the second ops come together to uh, put in all those steps. We have a lot of out of the box supply chains that you could use for a, let's say, source to URL kind of a setup, or source to sign and add testing to it and all these other steps, and keep keep creating a lot of these variations of the supply chain for different teams needing to do different things, or different stages needing to do different things. So all of that's managed outside the scope of the development team. The development team is just creating that code, interfacing uh, with a very small subset of what this means to get this application over the fence. So, and here's a little bit more on that supply chain construct. The developer and the developer world is our inner loop. So anything that the developer is going to touch and iterate in is the inner loop. The outer loop essentially is how you go from there to an application runtime. How do you go from that inner loop to that outer loop? How do you go from that code to runtime? So you'd watch, these are the steps, and that's just an example, can be extended to um, various different integrations along the way. And that's the goal of supply chain, be able to provide the flexibility where it's needed, or provide an easy path to prod by using some of the inbuilt supply chains. So this, I know I spoke a lot, and I'm really looking forward to answer any questions. But before we do that, I quickly wanted to show all of this in action. Well, not all, just a sneak peek, let's just say. So I wanted to show you, this is the Tanzu application platform GUI. And we briefly talked about the accelerator. Just wanted to give you like a hang of what that accelerator looks like. So I'm going to, so these are some of the out of the box available accelerators. And what I would do is either use those, or as in the enterprise architecture team would create those accelerator, make them available in the platform. And as a developer, I go in and I can choose this accelerator, let's say, and I can create that accelerator. What it does is I creates that starting point as a zip. I can download that zip file. And then once I download, I can open it in VS Code. And that's what I had opened. So essentially, that's what we just downloaded, the Tanzu Java web app accelerator. It has that basic hello world kind of application just for the demonstration purpose, but it could do, you get the idea that, you know, provide that starting point to your team. Has all the Maven files, POM files in place. And um, all I need to, at this point in this VS Code editor, I have um, a place or the Tanzu plugin installed, and I can just okay, let's see. Did it not? Oh, it was already running. So, so while it deploys, I should be able to get this going on my local. So I did not have to write any YAMLs. I did not have to create the container. I did not have to do any of those things. And it's doing all of that for me behind the scenes, if you'd see. And it's able to push it, and I'd be able to access it on my local machine. So that's where uh, even being a Kubernetes developer doesn't need for you to uh, have a touch point with Kubernetes. You just be abstracted away and be working on your application. So once I say, okay, this is greetings from Spring Boot, WWC. So say yeah, hey, and I can go back and I can change it here. Oh, still coming up. Yeah, while we wait on this, I'll show you where we'd go from here. So, um, so once this is done, I, as a developer, would push this to Git and would want to run run it through the supply chain or the pipeline that we, my second ops created, and push it to like a test environment, let's say. And there you go. So it took my local chain, pushed it out, and I'm able to iterate through my development cycles on the local setup. So moving from here, I need to create this as a Tanzu command. And I'm, in the interest of time, I'm not going to run it, just show you what it would take. So we'd run a command as simple as Tanzu apps workload create, give the app a name, give what repo and what type. And this type is the name of the supply chain behind the scenes that it gets picked up and executes. So once it does that, I should be able to do a workload. Tanzu app workload list. Okay. First, forgot about that namespace. So I have two applications running. One is the Tanzu Java web app, which is the one we were running from my VS Code. And then there's the other one that's the Git one. So both of those are showing here. And I can say Tanzu apps workload get. And here it is. It says all the different pods that are involved in creating this, and that's the URL. And I can simply go in and hit. So I didn't need to do anything about setting that ingress. It's all taken care of. It may take a little bit to come up, but there you go. So in summary, like this is where we want to get at. We want our energies to be focused on delivering the business value and not be worried about everything around around uh, the application getting pushed to Kubernetes. And we want it to be like another VM environment which is boring, which works, and uh, let our developers focus on what they're good at. So with that, that's all I had for today.
There's
I'm
a
ready to
couple
take
of
any
questions
questions.
about the demo specifically.
Uh-huh.
So Sunita Patel asked 2 questions. So first one, the sample app that you ran to test locally. What is, so Sunita asked, what is it using to do that? Do you have something installed? Is it running Kubernetes locally?
So
How
it
is that
is
app run?
using, yeah, are you still able to see my screen? So it is still using my kubeconfig file. I am using the context. I have a tap environment in AKS running. So uh, it's using that, and it uses tilt plugin. So so that's what's behind the scenes, and that's how it's running.
Okay. And second question, also from Sunita, is does the accelerator sample, or can you see the resulting YAML that it creates to deploy that application?
So I'm not sure if I follow the question correctly, but the accelerator is essentially a YAML to define how that accelerator would look on the UI that we were just looking at. And I can, in that UI, also explore. So I could, let's say, go back in here. I can explore, literally see what this is going to download for me. I can see there's a Maven folder, there's a config folder, there's a tilt file, and then there's a source folder. So all of that comes down with the accelerator that I downloaded. Now the idea of accelerator is for the enterprise architects to get in here and set standards for their teams and be able to, leverage that to accelerate the development cycle. I hope that
Okay.
answered.
So there's a clarification. So basically, the question about the YAML was if you can see the YAML that actual Kubernetes will be deployed. So, for example, you mentioned that it deploys all the egress and services, etc.
Yeah, so that all is part of the supply chain. So the supply chain is a bunch of CRDs that are there, and there's more to like how the supply chain works. And I'd happy to come back in and like dig into those. But short answer, there's a way, and I did not use that in my supply chain, but there is a way to kind of have the YAMLs get pushed to a Git repo, and you'll be able to see exactly what got applied to your Kubernetes cluster.
Okay. And I think that's just a general question. If someone wants to start with Tanzu right now,
Yes.
And of course there's starting as an enterprise and, talking to the VMware account team. But if you want to test things and try it at home or on your laptop or in a lab?
So a great starting point would be the Tanzu Community Edition, and you can try it out, download, start there. What it does is gives you like a VMware enterprise grade Kubernetes, just a sense of how it'll look like, and it has uh, all the basics that you need on your cluster already packaged with that install. So that's how you get started. And then there's open source project. Let's look at Tanzu application platform. And I believe you should be able to download it and run it on your environment. So you just need to create like a username password. Of course, this is just to try it out, go to docs, look at the install instructions, and you can play around with this. Not in a prod environment. So you use this and install in either the community edition Tanzu or you can start on any of the hyperscalers like EKS, AKS, like anywhere on the public cloud is also where you can, just look at this documentation and start installing. I can I can leave my LinkedIn here in the chat. So if anybody wants to reach out, feel free to reach out on my LinkedIn, please.
Okay, so one other question. And so it seems like Tanzu works on top of existing Kubernetes clusters. And do they have to be created before you use the Tanzu Kubernetes edition? And I think this might be a good place to maybe just, if you can briefly talk about the build, run, manage, that there's different aspects to Kubernetes.
Yes.
To Tanzu.
Yes. Yes. So I know there's that flavor of build, run, manage, and I wanted to just clarify this, that Tanzu is not one thing, it's several things. And the several things, there's a few of those which we spoke about. And I'm really glad that these questions or clarifying questions came up, are essentially 4 different products which make the Tanzu Kubernetes operator or Kubernetes for operator umbrella. And Tanzu Kubernetes Grid is the VMware Enterprise Kubernetes runtime. But for any of these other things to work, you don't need that. That's not a prerequisite. If you have a Kubernetes runtime or dial tone wherever, as long as it's upstream compatible, you should be able to integrate it into service mesh, mission control, observability. And that being clarified, the second part, the Tanzu application platform, which is where we are trying to address the developer and give them an easy path to prod, that's where you can go in and install to, again, any Kubernetes cluster. Doesn't have to be the Kubernetes runtime from VMware. If you have an AKS, EKS, or any upstream compatible Kubernetes, you can go in and install Tanzu application platform on top of it and get this experience that we just saw. You will be able to download VS Code plugins. You'll need to create a login with like us to download it, but it's all here. You can go in and play with it. Did that answer?
Yeah, I think, it answered the question.
Yes, VMware does give a way for you to create Kubernetes cluster as well. Yes, but you can integrate with existing. All of that is correct.
Well, I guess we're close to the top of the hour and questions are slowing down. So Thank you, Natasha, again for coming and speaking to us about Tanzu. The recording will be uploaded to Women Who Code Cloud YouTube channel, so you can definitely look out for that. And Natasha, if you'd like to put in your LinkedIn profile to the channel as well, that'd be great. But otherwise, thank you everybody for attending, and see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.